I know I've been early, but I really think the stock market's about had it here. The insiders are all selling massively.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for July 29th through August 5th, 2024, while supplies last. First, we feature Dealer's Choice Constitutional Silver Dimes, quarters, and half dollars at $2.50 over spot per ounce. We also have 1 ounce gold backdated Canadian maples at $65 over spot. Next, we have a limited quantity of 1 ounce silver full color Trump Fight for America bars at $6 over spot. They come 22 a sheet and so have a minimum order of 20. And finally, we have 1 10th ounce gold backdated American Eagles at $39 over melt per coin. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty and Finance. And back with us today is our good friend David Morgan from the Morgan Report. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's always good to be with you, Elijah. Thank you.
Well, we really appreciate your time today. I did want to discuss what is happening in the metals markets, and really all the markets in general, at least today, seem to be selling off. I know there's news about a disappointing jobs number, but your take on what we're seeing today?
Well, a couple of things. One, for the metals markets, I've said earlier, I think in our last interview, that I saw high-level consolidation for both metals. I mean, silver got as high as about 32.50. It's under that now. It's been struggling to get back over 30, and it's going basically sideways to down. Gold is looking better. It's touching near the nominal new highs, but still basically going sideways. I think we're pretty much, entering the summer doldrums. I don't expect a lot of upward pressure in August. I think we'll see more downward pressure. Seasonality is very clear that usually gold gets its low for the time frame in August. That may take hold here. As far as the broader market is concerned, I am more concerned than ever. I know I've been early, but I really think the stock market's about had it here. The insiders are all selling massively. I mean, you look at the amount of Bank of America stock that Warren Buffett is selling. You look at Jeff Bezos, you look at some of the big players selling off their stocks. I mean, even Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan selling stock. All the insiders, the big fat cats, have been selling stock. And that's an indicator that the insiders know that we've probably hit a peak or near peak, and they're selling into strength, and they're giving that stock whatever market price the market will bear to whom. Well, whoever the buyers are on the other side, pension funds or the general public or IRAs or, retirement plans. So that should be a cue and a clue to everybody. I did that on my last weekly perspective, where I talk about, different topics. Sometimes I go philosophical, and sometimes usually go into kind of a wrap up of the week. Not necessarily all the markets, but the ones that are kind of most important in my thinking for the week. And last week it was basically how many of the insiders are selling off their stocks. So timing wise is tough, because what happens when you get an overvalued market is the insiders know to sell their stocks, but not sell them all at once, so they'll drive the market down. So they do what's called a distribution cycle. And with so many participants in the stock market now and so much money in the stock market now, they can sell large blocks and not really move the market because the liquidity is so strong. And that's what's going on. But at some point, the market recognizes that, wait a minute, there aren't any buyers. The price has got to come down to find a buyer. But wait a minute, there's not much more strength in the stock market. The prices has to come down to find more buyers, and on it goes. So I think we're just starting that cycle now, but thanks for bringing it up, because I think it's imperative that people that are overvalued or overexposed in the stock market start taking some money off the table. Don't expect to have the stock market go up forever. It just doesn't. No market does.
Now, getting into maybe some of the more of the details in the economy, obviously you mentioned how CEOs are selling a lot of stock right now, billions over the last year. And also we saw the just disappointing jobs number this we saw the disappointing jobs number today. We're also seeing, as you've reported, a lot of stores closing. What other signs of a recession coming are you seeing?
Yeah, well, those are the main two, really, to look at the stock market and compare that to the physical economy. And you see so many businesses and corporate restaurants that have closed or are closing or they're paring down, getting rid of, places that are not profitable. And I'll just give you one real quick example of the recession or problems with the economy, and that is In and Out. In and Out is a privately owned company. There's no stock involved with it. It's been around for a long time, and they've expanded their market through very carefully through different states. And they are closing down a few of their stores. And that really had my head scratching because they do such great marketing surveys. They really don't have to market. It's word of mouth advertising. What I discovered was, for example, their Oakland store isn't closing down from lack of profitability. It's closing down for safety reasons. There's been so many robberies and let's say foul play in the parking lot of that In and Out that they basically decided to close it down because it's kind of become a problem area for the amount of theft that's going on in that area, which is very sad, but it's also a reflection of the true economic conditions. I mean, if everything was as good as the stock market makes it look, you wouldn't have the reality of people, robbing each other to, pay bills or, whatever. So it's very sad, but I think it was a good example. It's just a one-off, but it's clear that as the economy deteriorates more and more, you see more crime and you're seeing more crime. So I think that's another one to think about. I don't like to report it, but you asked the question. I want to give you a clear-cut example, and that is a very interesting one to contemplate.
It is interesting how you mentioned it's because of crime that the In and Out is closing down, and it seems like we're seeing a rise in crime in many states, especially California, with all the mismanagement there. But it definitely does tie into economic policy and the state of the economy as well. Where do you see that heading as a lot of so many people are fleeing California, right, because of issues like this? Your perspective on where this is heading in the US, the level of crime, and how that ties into the state of the economy?
Well, as you know, Elijah, I've been a market student for a lot of my life, and I continue to learn more always. No one knows it all, but one of my betters, the late great Jim Dine, said a trend in motion continues until it actually stops. And so I'll just add on to that. The trend has, started some time ago, but until the economy actually gets better, you're going to see that trend not only continue, but probably increase, which means you'll probably see more and more people fleeing California, more businesses that were once, very important to the California economy leaving, moving to, a lot of them will go to Texas. Some move to Arizona. Some just, are in several states that just close the California branch and leave the rest open. And unfortunately, this is a sign of times, as you said. And I don't think the trend's just getting started. I think it started some time ago, but I think it will increase.
Now, as we see a slowdown in the economy, obviously we're seeing the stock market sell off today and metals sell off as well. When do you see a disconnect between stocks and metals? Because it seems like over the last few months, everything has been rising and we've kind of been in this melt up period. If we do go into a recession, do you anticipate metals to take a further beating, or do you see them as kind of people looking towards precious metals as a hedge during these times?
This is a little bit of a nuanced answer. I'll try to be as crystal clear as I can. First of all, the gold moves opposite the stock market, more so than the dollar. And so if you have the stock market doing so well, why is gold making nominal new highs? Which shows you when gold should actually be very weak because the stock market is doing so well, gold is doing it. So if you think about it, that means that really something's wrong because gold really should not be doing so well if the stocks are doing so. Which means that, in a big sell-off, gold would probably go down in sympathy with the stock market because there's always a liquidity squeeze, meaning that the fund managers manage money and even individuals, insurance companies have to sell whatever's liquid. Gold's usually the most liquid thing that they own, and they'll sell it off, and selling pressure takes the price lower, but it'll be temporary. So what I'm saying is once we get this realignment, meaning that stocks down, gold up, it's starting from a very, very strong position. So it'll go to an even stronger position because money that is in the stock market will move over into the commodity sector, particularly in the money metals, gold to lead. And you should see strength in the gold market like you haven't seen in quite some time. So I hope I'm clear on that. Could the gold price go down? Yeah, and a big sell-off it will. But it's also telling you ahead of time how strong it really is and how much it's geared up to go higher and higher. I think you're going to see a pretty good fourth quarter in 2024. And I really expect 2025 to start setting enough new highs in the gold price, silver to participate, that more and more people and also entities, meaning pension funds, insurance companies, managed money, hedge funds, family offices to come into the sector again. Nothing feeds these algorithms more than momentum. And momentum is mass times velocity. In other words, volume and price movement. And when you have those two things working together, it's going to catch the algorithms and that's going to feed on itself. So I'm still very bullish. And I do see this shift. Is it going to be before the end of the year or not? I would guess yes. But as I said earlier, I've been early. I mean, I've been looking at the stock market to, make a peak and start falling for some time. It really hasn't, but we have more clues and cues to that happening now than probably we have had for some time.
Now, another factor influencing the silver price that you've mentioned before is war, actually. So silver kind of being the metal of war. Can you expand on that? As we continue to see increasing geopolitical conflicts, what is your perspective on how that will impact the silver price?
Well, we'll impact it positively. A lot of these mil spec items require, very rough treatment, and that these, communication devices or, solar panels or whatever they have in the field, can do their job under any conditions, sandstorms, windstorms, ice storms, you name it. So military specification is really usually a very difficult one to meet. And because of that, it's very hardened equipment. And if you have very hardened equipment, you want the best of the best as far as, power to weight ratio from the electronic side. You're usually looking at silver batteries, not in all cases, of course, but oftentimes you are. Then if you go to the weapons side and you look at, some of these missiles and torpedoes and how much silver they use in the circuitry, it's substantial. And, if you blow up that torpedo or missile, obviously that silver's been dispersed and you need to build another one. So, obviously, as I'm very much for peace, but nonetheless, the reality is that an increase in war weaponry usage would definitely put a demand on the silver side. How much, no one could predict unless you could tell me how big an increase we're going to see in the war efforts. And if you could tell me that, we could, make a guesstimate of how much more silver that would use.
And you've also mentioned before that it seems like industrial demand itself could really potentially consume the entire silver supply in the coming years. So where is that extra silver going to come from for investment and other uses?
That comes from Matt Watson. I'll give him a shout out. You can look him up. He does I think it's called a Green Metals Report for Kitco. I think it's once a week. And Matt's a very bright guy. He looks at all the metals elements on the periodic chart and does a report, and he has a consulting service. But where does that metal come from? It comes from the above ground stockpile. So if you have 2 billion ounces in 1,000-ounce bars, and that's above ground stockpile, who owns it? Well, investors and industry. Really two categories. So industry is going to need it to produce whatever they produce: silverware, solar panels, silver mesh, silver shots, silver liquids, whatever it is for the industrial side. And then investors, of course, are looking for price appreciation. So they may hold 1,000-ounce bars in inventory, but they're not really willing to sell it until they get the kind of price appreciation that they want. In other words, they might want 10%, they might 20, they might see a doubling in the silver price, whatever it is. So a lot of that silver really isn't for sale until we get to a higher price. And then kind of price begets price. In other words, as industry has to buy it in order to stay in business, that is a certain demand that really doesn't go away. And then that draws in more participants on the investment side, which means it drives it even higher. So I see once these two demands start to go for a limited supply and the price of silver is going higher as the above ground supply is diminishing, I think we would get in a situation where we saw once before, but this time there's a vast amount of education and people actually see it and know it's happening. Whereas when it happened between 1990 and 2005, unless you're a true silver bug and really studied the market, you're really unaware of that. But this time around, I think with people like Matt Watson, myself, and many others that understand the dynamics, and there's a lot more awareness of the precious metals, and they see these, and they see them coming from more than one source, and they can verify them, that will be added impetus. I mean, I would almost guarantee that Elon Musk is very aware of the projection for what's going to take place with the above ground inventory of silver going on from the last couple of years as far as a decade out or more, that the silver demand cannot be met industrial side only with what we're producing with mining and recycling. There could be a shift. There could be some substitute that comes in. There could be a big discovery. There could be some vast way to recycle silver very cheaply. I mean, you have to think about the other side of the coin. Is there something we're overlooking? And yes, it's possible, but it's not very probable. So the dynamics for silver is probably as good now as they've ever been. It's just that, again, it's the education. And more people really are aware of it than the current price dynamic may indicate.
It will be interesting to see really where the price goes from here, because I know we've broken through and held very close to that $30 level for quite a while now. Do you see that as significant? And, a lot of commentators are wanting and looking for $50 silver. And I know back in 2011, from $30 to $50, it was a few months and we were already there. I think just 2 or 3. So your perspective on do you see that we could see a dramatic move going forward here?
Yes, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, I've, done the futures thing for a very long time, and it's psychological. There's something about round numbers, whether it's soybean oil or lumber or cotton, it doesn't really matter. It could be the sugar market. There's certain levels where people get confidence. So if the sugar market hits a certain level and stays there, and that becomes basically a support level, there's a lot more psychological momentum or ideas that, I'm really safe to buy silver above this level because it's maintained it for, 3 months now or 4 months or whatever the case may be. So it is important. It is technically important just looking at a chart. It's also psychologically important because people, especially when you're in a leveraged investment like the futures markets, you want to not only trade with the trend, but you also want to have some level of confidence that you're getting in at a level where you're above support or near support so that you have an amount of confidence. And that feeds on itself. And then, of course, it goes to a new level and then it gets overbought, it sells off, and then a new support level has to build. But it kind of stair steps up. Going to what you implied is there's very little upside resistance on silver above about 33. And once you get to that level, will we beat a 50, 3 days later? And the answer is no, but it could accelerate, especially if depending on internet chatter, if a big participant comes in. I don't expect Warren Buffett to buy silver again, but if you get, let's say Elon Musk buys a large silver mine or buys stock in a large silver producer or puts his own silver refinery in somewhere, something along those lines. And I'm just saying Elon as an example. It could be someone else somewhere else. but all of a sudden there's some big news in the silver market that will bring awareness instantly. And a lot of people that haven't even thought about silver might start to look at the market and maybe run across this interview and say, really? Oh, that doesn't make any sense. You mean we're using up more silver than we're mining and recycling? You got to be kidding me. And once they determine that for themselves, they'll say, oh my goodness, the dynamics of silver look pretty good. And heck, inflation adjusted, it's really cheap. I'm going to take a X position in my portfolio in the silver market. And it's a small market. So once you cross that threshold, you could see this market really accelerate.
Now, moving forward here, I did want to discuss kind of the political environment that we find ourselves in. Obviously, it's been a crazy few weeks, and it seems like there's this talk about, saving democracy. But you put a video out that really reframed that whole point. Is it really democracy that we're looking to save? Or, I mean, it seems like obviously that seems to be a talking point that is pretty empty on in a lot of ways. But that whole idea of, are we really trying to save democracy? Is that what we should be doing? Or are we a constitutional republic and we should be trying to save that? Can you expand on kind of the points that you made there and how that whole question about, do we live in democracy? Should we save democracy is really the wrong question to ask?
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Elijah. You can go to my website, themorningreport.com, and hit the blog tab and just look at, the recent blogs. I do 2 or 3 a week. I do a weekly perspective every Friday or Saturday. And I decided rather than get into the markets and what gold and silver did for the week, just to do this, 5 minutes about the difference between a constitutional republic and a democracy. The United States is a constitutional republic. At least that's how it was founded. And of course, you hear almost everybody in the political class talk about the democracy, and both sides talk about saving the democracy, and we need to save our democracy, and our democracy is at risk. And that word's used over and over. And it's really not true as far as how we're founded. So I went back into, the history of the foundation of the country and why the founding fathers were against a democracy and what the differences are, and why it's important to uphold a constitutional republic. And the old adage that many, let's say, more patriotic or more well-studied people know, no matter left or right, that the idea being that when asked after the Constitutional Convention, Benjamin Franklin was asked, well, what have you given us? He said, a constitutional republic, or a republic if you could keep it, meaning that most morph into a democracy, and democracies usually last around 200 years. And then when there's just too much demand on the producers from the people that are taking from the producers, where everybody's trying to get something for nothing, the system collapses. So that was the gist of it. I was happy to do it. I think it was clear. I got a lot of positive feedback on it. It doesn't take much time. You can vet it. You can check everything I said in it. It's all, easily vetted that it's correct. And it makes people think. It's like, what do you want? And basically, the foundation was individual liberty, individual freedom, and individual responsibility. With all these freedoms comes responsibility, and you've got to be responsible for yourself. You don't want to have to depend on the state for basically anything. You want to depend on the state to uphold your liberty, or to defend your liberty, or to make sure your liberty stays intact. Your freedom is there. You could be 100% right, but then democracy, which is mobocracy or mob rule, as long as the mob decides that they want what you have and the majority rules, they could vote away your personal property, for example. And so this isn't what we want. We want each individual. And this is funny because it sort of goes along with some of the new liberal ideas about being acknowledged for your own diversity. Well, there's nothing more diverse than being an individual. And that an individual has as much right as anybody else at law, as long as you're within the realm of the law. And you're supposed to be defended for those rights. And so it's kind of interesting to me how, if you really look at it from an objective perspective, that some, let's say, new liberals don't really realize that the best way to get what they want and maintain their diversity is to not fight for democracy where it's mob rule, but to fight for individual liberty, which is a constitutional republic.
Can you expand on kind of then where do you see us heading? Because you mentioned how democracies typically only last about 200 years. So it seems like we might be coming to the end of like kind of our form of government as it stands today. If we're kind of acting as a democracy in some respect, where do you see that heading, and how can people stand up for liberty, as you mentioned?
Yeah, it's real tough. Yeah, you're right. So basically, it morphs into a democracy, which you could say we've had for a long time. I mean, if you go to, a lot of people are undereducated. The civic classes today in the state-run schools don't really teach how the system is set up and why the electoral college was set up the way it is, because they didn't want a majority rule. They wanted the people to be represented. But people, well, she got the majority vote, and therefore she should win. That wasn't how it was set up, and there's a reason for that. Back to individual liberty. So as it morphs into democracy, it's going to unravel. It's unraveling as we speak. It will continue that trend, I believe, and then we'll, resurrect a new form of government. What will it look like? Will there be a new constitutional convention? Will most likely it'll be a banking-led system, new Bretton Woods, if you will, probably be based on a new format of the monetary system with perhaps central bank digital currencies and a digital ID. And the whole idea of individual liberty will kind of go out the window, and it's all about your safety, and your individual rights are based on your individual control, based on the state recognizing who you are with a digital ID, and without the digital ID and state really having availability to all your liberty. In other words, having control over what you can and cannot do, what you can and cannot say, where you can and cannot go, based on them looking after you or Big Brother taking hold of your safety. You've given up your liberty without really realizing it in many cases. And you think you've got safety, but you've given up safety for freedom. That's the way I see it. Is it going to go that direction and actually happen? I don't know. There may be some pushbacks. What can you do? Number one is, digest what I just said and verify it. Well, David said this, he's an extremist or whatever. Well, maybe I'm a visionary. Maybe I see things a little ahead of the others. Maybe not. You determine that for yourself. Once you've made that determination, well, you can get with your Congress critters. You can call them on the phone. You can write an email. You can send a physical letter. That may do some good in some cases. You can educate others. I think that's one thing. And the other one is to drop out of the system as much as possible. So one of the ways you could fight them very easily in a non-aggressive way, using the non-aggression principles, to go to the ATM once a week or whatever and spend cash into the system. Quit using credit, quit using debit, start using cash everywhere you go. That will put a lot of pressure on the banks to maintain cash in the system. That's one thing you can do. Another one, as I just said, is educate others. And the other one is to work with your community, not only with educating them, but to see what you can do and what you can do outside the system. Maybe you can start a barter community. Maybe you can start your own, labor dollar or whatever, as long as the community agrees. There are things you can do as far as work with entities that are already pushing back. I mean, you can go to the Mises Institute. You can look at the Cato Institute. You can look at Citizens for Sound Money. You can do something with Ron Paul's website. So a lot of places you can get educated. There's a lot of us, you being one of them, that have spent a great deal of time, energy, and effort and their own money in many cases to help educate others. And all you have to do really is kind of align with them. And a lot of it's been set up for you, where really all you have to do is come into the fold and ask the question, how can I do to serve the community that's trying to preserve our liberty? So I think if you open your mind, there's actually many avenues you can take to do something that you're somewhat comfortable with, or maybe getting outside of your comfort zone to push back.
All right. Well, David Morgan, we really appreciate your time today. If our viewers are interested in learning more, they can go to themorganreport.com. Can you share with us a bit about that and any last thoughts you had?
Yeah, just to get on our free email list. I mean, go to themorganreport.com and get on our free list. If you're interested in our private work, then look at the subscribe button or tab on the website. And the other one is the documentary, silversunrise.tv. I just finished my interview. Of course, I'll be in it as one of the participants this week. And I forget how many, 20, 25 questions, about an hour and a half. You will not see them all. But it was fun in a way. It was a little bit demanding, but that's accomplished. So I only have really 2 more interviews to do. That part of the process will be accomplished. And then, of course, the big, I don't know what it takes, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months to edit it all together and produce the film. But we're getting close to the end. And here it is, the end of July, early August. So I'm guessing the end of August, we'll probably have the interviews done. So starting in September, the editing process will start. And hopefully early 2025, the documentary will be out. And of course, I'll be mentioning that to websites like yours. It's to get the latest trailers that will kind of give you the progress report of where we're at silversunrise.tv. You can have a look at some of the interviews we've already done and also the new ones as we come aboard.
Sounds good. David, once again, thank you so much for your time and God bless.
God bless you. Thanks.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for July 29th through August 5th, 2024, while supplies last. First, we feature Dealer's Choice Constitutional Silver Dimes, quarters, and half dollars at $2.50 over spot per ounce. We also have 1 ounce gold backdated Canadian maples at $65 over spot. Next, we have a limited quantity of 1 ounce silver full-color Trump Fight for America bars at $6 over spot. They come 22 a sheet and so have a minimum order of 20. And finally, we have 1 10th-ounce gold backdated American Eagles at $39 over melt per coin. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.